That's good. Hey guys, here we are for chapter 6, where we're going to specifically look at the human population, factors that affect it, etc. Here for chapter 6.1, how many people can the earth support? Big question, something that we really do want to think about. Now the case study here is planet Earth. It's kind of the idea of, how many can we have? Well, let's just sort of look at history, if you will. From the evolution of Homo sapiens. Now that's up for question exactly when Homo sapiens were here, etc. But humans, as we would recognize them as humans. So it's been about 200,000 years from Homo sapiens to 2 billion people on the planet. 2 billion people happened around 1924. So however far back you want to think, it took to that time to get 2 billion. It only took us 50 years to add the next 2 billion. And 25 years after that, we were at our third 2 billion. So somewhere around 1999 for us to get to 6 billion. 19 years later, as the book, that puts us somewhere around 1918, just when this book happened to be published, they had us at 7.6 billion people. Now, I'm going to throw up the current world clock here. At least as of today, those were the numbers running on my computer early this morning. Yeah, so current population, somewhere actually more around 7.8 billion people and counting. Now, factors that actually impact the rise of this human population. Huge one was the agricultural revolution. We brought food right to our doorsteps. We didn't have to hunt it anymore. We could just raise it right where we are. That was a big one. It gave us abundant food supply and the population grew quickly. Technologies. Technologies have allowed us to expand to the entire planet. Wherever we go, we just take our climate with us. Here in Florida, we bring the cool weather with us, air conditioning. You go up north into Canada, Alaska, Siberia, well, we take heat with us. We build a shelter and we control our environment. It's allowed us to expand across the entire planet. Also, really along with the Industrial Revolution came a medical revolution. Inventing of the microscope allowed us to discover germs, these microscopic organisms, and we've improved our sanitation. So, abundant food, abundant area to spread into the entire planet, and advanced health care has helped us to live longer, and the population has exploded, leaving us with really the ultimate question, and some of what we're exploring here: what is a sustainable human population? At what point can the planet not really handle more humans and we have to level off or possibly crash? That really is what we are up against. So, how many people can the earth support? Well, throughout history, the population's grown very slowly. Once again, 200,000 years to get to 2 billion people. 50 years to get to the next 2 billion. We're in that J-shaped curve of exponential growth. It took a really long time to get there, but we're there now. Our population has grown rapidly for the last 200 years. Now, top of the stack, if we're just looking at them country-wise, is China with about 1.4 billion, India with about 1.3 billion, and then the United States with about 370 million people. Pakistan, some others come underneath. There's a big jump between China, India, and the U.S., but still, U.S. is the third most populous country on the planet. Our rate of population growth has slowed tremendously since 1960 to about 1.2%. So our growth rate about 1.2, but the population is still growing. So there's a difference between growth rate and population growing. Rate is at the speed which it's happening. Also, our growth is very unevenly distributed. About 2% of the population growth is added to developed countries. Now this would be France, Spain, Germany, England, the United States, Canada, etc. Highly developed countries, population is only adding about 2%. And it's about 98% of the new population is being added into the less developed countries. A lot of the African countries, it depends, but some Asian countries, some South American countries, it depends on some of those. Some countries in South America are very developed, some more like cities in Asia are very developed, especially if you talk about China. It's in this kind of in between. Some places very developed, some places not. In the less developed areas, 98% of our population is rising there. Also, people are still moving from rural to urban areas. Now this happened in the Americas early on, from like in the 50s, we really began moving out of the rural, but a lot of the world is now starting to do the same phenomenon. So the population chart up here, the top one, the ziggity-zaggity one, is the population growth rate. And the bottom one is our actual population size. You will notice that right where it crosses there is right around the year 2000. Our growth rate has been dropping, but the population is still increasing. And the reason for this is the more people you have, any growth rate that's in the positive, and that population size continues to grow. So this is going back to say about 1950, just at the edge of the chart. So the population growth rate has come down. They end at the red, and beyond the red is, everybody's best guesswork. Estimating what we think will happen. Whenever you make a guess about the future, it is some guesswork involved. Hopefully it's educated and pretty good, but we'll see. This chart up here, the blue and the yellow, once again, is tracking the same thing from 1950 onwards. And we're projecting out to 2050. The dotted line is showing where we currently are. Once again, the book was around 2018, so, a few years past that. Let's take a look. In the yellow, this is the more developed countries. And you'll notice the population increase is not extreme. It's very slow, if hardly anything at all. However, in the developing nations, or the less developed, that population growth is continuing, and it's expected to continue as we move upwards of 8, 9, 10 billion. We'll look at some of these projections. Remember, it's a book published in 2018, but some of the data is actually put together before that. So some of their projected growth rates, we're almost outstripping the low numbers already. We'll continue to take a look at some of those. But anyway, human population growth, notice, developed countries, it's fairly stable. It's in the less developed countries where we're tending to have most of our growth, which is difficult because those are the countries least able to handle the extra population. All right. How long can the human population keep growing? Straight up. Eventually, we usually see it level out or crash. When is it going to level out? That's the hopeful idea. How long can it keep growing? Well, we have a lot of different views. There's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of really smart people out there thinking about this, and they're divided on the different ideas that are out there. Some are saying, we've already exceeded the tipping points. We've already gone beyond. We've degraded the natural capital so much already that we've already hit a tipping point. We're already at it, and what we're going to see is the event. We might still be growing, but they say the crash is already inevitable. One viewpoint. Another says the biggest problem is simply the rapidly growing number of people in the less developed countries. We need to put our energies and efforts into teaching and training people in the less developed countries. They need to not increase the population as much. Other people say, the actual problem is the overconsumption in the more developed countries. The American footprint is much larger. We use more resources per person than people in the less developed countries. And other people are saying that's the problem. The less developed countries, maybe you're not increasing your population, but you're using a lot more resources, and that's the problem. Another one says, hey, technological ingenuity will help us find substitutes. It was long thought that the population was in a exponential, but the food was in a steady growth. Well, because of technology, we've been able to sort of exponentially curve the food output as well. Some people say, hey, we will continue to develop more technologies, we'll continue to develop new ways to do things, and our technologies will allow us to keep up with the population growth no matter what it is. 4 different viewpoints. And as usual, my best guess, it's not any one of them. It's going to be a combination. We probably have crossed some tipping points. The growing population in the less developed will be a problem. The affluence of the developed using too much is a problem. But our technological ingenuity is going to help. We somehow need to sort of bring all of them into one overarching view. Attack them all at the same time is usually our best shot. So, as the human population grows, so does our human ecological footprint. Remember back earlier, I want to say chapter 1, could have been chapter 2, we looked at how many Earths it would take for the current population. We're using 2.8 Earths currently at our current rate of consumption. There's more here, we can keep using it, but if we keep using it at this rate, we don't have enough planet Earth. So the more people we get, the greater the footprint. Now we can do things to reduce our footprint, but anyway, greater population is going to use more resources. That's just a bottom line. And a lot of times, the question to ask isn't what is the planet's carrying capacity, not how many of us can survive on the planet, but the real question probably is, what is our cultural carrying capacity? In other words, what is the carrying capacity where we can kind of keep our culture with us? We can be cultured people. So in other words, what is the maximum number of people who can live in reasonable freedom and comfort indefinitely? In other words, sustainability. How can we keep the current lifestyle we have indefinitely for future generations? That's really a better question. I don't want to know how many of us can survive, can be packed in here just at the point of practically wanting to slit each other's throats. How many of us can survive on the planet and we can live a life truly worth living? That's probably the better question to ask. We have altered natural systems in the world in 8 major ways. Picture up here is a little pull-out from the book. It might be hard to read in the picture-in-picture, so you can look at the book or PowerPoint, these natural capital degradations. Some of the things that humans are specifically doing to the natural capital out there, and these are all unquestionably being done. We've reduced biodiversity. Anytime we've gone in and we've turned a set of woods into a neighborhood, a shopping center, a city, we've reduced the biodiversity. We've taken out habitats and changed it. So that's something that we have done and we're currently still doing. We're increasing the use of net primary productivity, NPP. We're going into areas, we're farming, we're creating more food, more plant product, more NPP. We're increasing genetic resistance in pest species by spraying pesticides out onto crops or even in our backyards on our rose plants. We're increasing pest resistance and disease-causing bacteria. Hand sanitizer a lot of times just creates bugs resistant to these types of device, something that we are doing. we're eliminating a lot of natural predators. In Florida, the panther is almost extinct. Now, we all love the Florida panther. We want it to be here, but not in my backyard, right? Not in my neighborhood, not where my children and my pets play. So as the human population grows, we drive out certain predators. Tigers, there are not many tigers in the wild anymore. They're on preserves or in zoos. It's not that there aren't any, but not many. The white rhino, only 2 females left. As humans expand, some of these natural predators decrease. We've introduced a lot of harmful species into natural communities. Whether we brought kudzu from China, or we brought the air potato from Africa, or we brought certain insects or beetles, or released boa constrictors into the Everglades, all kinds of ways that we brought harmful species into some other communities where they didn't used to be. We're using some renewable resources faster than they can be replenished. Logging in some places. We're cutting down forests faster than we can replace them. We're digging ore out of the ground faster than the earth can replace it at our current uses. We're disrupting a lot of the natural chemical cycling and energy flow. Some of the climate change or pollution putting in disrupts this chemical cycling, whether it's water cycle, carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle, any of this natural cycling that nature's doing, we've caused disruptions in a lot of it. And we've been relying mostly on polluting and climate changing fossil fuels for the past 100 years or so. So here's the question. How are you impacting these things, directly or indirectly? And you want to think about it. In some ways, it's not that you can completely stop doing all of it, but we can cut back. In environmental science, that's a big thing. So look at these. Which ones are you doing directly, and what can you do to minimize it? Which ones are you doing indirectly that you could also do something to minimize? It's something for us to think about as we move on into the future. That is it for section 1. We'll see you next time when we look about the factors that actually affect the population size. Take care, guys.